Alright, last time we took a look at the command line tool from Nuxt called create-nuxt-app, which, again, it's analogous to create-nuxt-app. It's how you would get started pretty quickly just by selecting some options on the command line, maybe entering your project name and a description, and the author's name, which should be you. But here's what you get. So you get this folder structure that's pretty opinionated, and it can be a little bit overwhelming and hard to understand. As always, the Nux documentation is pretty friendly, so let's just take a look at that really quick. And here it is. And here's their getting started. They talk about how to install it. This is where you can find any help, just a self-service. Just in case there's not a video about it on YouTube to quickly watch, or a Nux Explain video. So, starting from scratch, it's pretty easy. Actually, this is what we used. We used the create-nuxt-app tool, and it just gives you a pretty good overview of everything. And here's all the configuration options for the Nux Config that we'll get into. Here's how to make routes. It has everything you might need to get started on your own. But I'm here to give you a supercharged tutorial, or at least that's the hope. But you can kind of see that they give you everything you'll need to get started. But let's take a look at this Nux config just to see what's in there. Now, this might look kind of familiar if you've ever used something like Babel or PostCSS or something, where you can create this configuration file with this module.exports object that has all the options. So let's just take a look at everything. So that's the progress bar color. There's some global CSS plugins. We'll get into plugins later. Here's the build module. So because I selected the Tailwind module, you'll see this build module, the Tailwind CSS, in this build modules. Now, if you didn't select Tailwind, that's okay. It's not going to be in here. Same with ESLint. If you didn't pick a linting framework, or if you picked another one, you'll see that here instead. We also have the Progressive Web Application module and the Axios. And it gives you a link to the docs if you want to check that out. It's a little bit advanced for what we're going to do here, but it does have some pretty cool options. And then this is where you can extend the Webpack config with extra loaders or custom loaders for files that Nux doesn't handle. Now, if you've never used Webpack before, you're in for a real treat, because we're going to get into how to optimize your app and how to make this really production ready. So, but we'll get into that in a later video. In this video, I just want to give you an overview of Nuxt and what you're going to see out of the box. So let's just take a look here. This is the basic Tailwind. This is just the basic Tailwind starting stuff. And it has readmes in all these different directories. So if you did want to take a look, it does give you a little bit of an overview of what it is. This is the Nux logo. It's just an SVG file, but you can also see that they're able to use it as a view component. And that's kind of a key thing that we're going to get into later when we start talking about Webpack and how to optimize. Layouts. Again, we'll talk about this later, but this is the base layout. You can create as many layouts as you want. The default layout is going to be the layout that's assumed by default by any of your page components. So this is what's going to load on the this is what's going to load outside of your main page component. So don't worry too much about this. We'll get into this later. But for now, just realize that, say you wanted to have a sidebar and have that sidebar be static or something, you could set this up in a layout. We'll skip middleware for now. Let's go to pages. This is probably where we'll spend a lot most of our time going over Nuxt, but you can see here that, here's the container. That's where the logo component is. That's the title of our project. It's generated code, so you're going to see the name of your project literally as you entered it. Same with the subtitle. That's going to be your description. And then here are all the handy links that it gives you. And you can see this is pretty much just standard Vue code, but it is all generated for you. Plugins. We will get into plugins later. It's a little bit advanced for now. We don't have to mess with the server very much right now. And if you did want to use a Vuex store, which is a single source of truth data store for Vue, you can use it. It's not required to get started with Nuxt, and we're just going to keep it pretty simple to get started. Middleware, however, is also a pretty interesting concept, and it's a little advanced for what we're going to do, but you can see that it's definitely it's definitely a useful thing, especially if you read about it. Basically what it does is it lets you define a custom function that can be run before rendering either a page or group of pages. So for instance, if you wanted to have a area of your app that's only accessible to registered users, you could set that up as middleware, and Nuxt would handle the rest for you. So that's pretty much it for now, except for this Tailwind config. We'll get into this later, but if you do use Tailwind, you can configure it here. They give you the base file out of the box. So there you have it. That's what you get when you first create a create-nuxt-app.